Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to yet another program, Recount Watch, brought to you by the People's Progressive Party Civic. I'm your host, Michael Gordon. I have the distinct honor tonight of being joined by first PPPC counting agent and attorney at law, Sonia Parag. Sonia, I'd like to welcome you to the program.
Good evening, Gordon. Thank you very much. I'd like to be. I'm really happy to be here, actually.
And last but by no means least, PPPC strongman, Mr. Joseph Hamilton.
Strong man.
Strongman, for want of a better word, Joseph Hamilton. Welcome, guys.
Hi,
Welcome.
Michael. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, Michael. Sonia, good night.
Good night to you, Mr. Hamilton. It's nice to see you again.
Okay, so we have concluded day 23 of 25 stipulated days for the national recount for the March 2, 2020 general and regional elections. If I could start off tonight by having both of you give me a synopsis of the recount process so far. Of course, the process has been marred by lots of shenanigans, and of course, a wide range of peripheral issues brought into focus, other than for what the order and for what the process is actually there for, and that is to recount the actual ballots. I'll begin with you, Sonia.
All right. Well, good night. Thank you again. Yes, I am a counting agent. I'm also a candidate for the PPPC, but I am a counting agent specifically in Station 1 of the 12 stations that we have at the convention center. And right now, I am participating in the recount for Region 8. I would have commenced and completed Region 1 and Region 5. And yes, as you have said, the process is not what it is according to law, just the recounting of the ballots, and as a matter of fact, allowing the will of the people to speak. It has gone into what they deem to be an audit. So what happened is that as we're going along, we have established, or they have established, as a matter of fact, different mechanisms. And one such mechanism is the observation report that was basically created after the order was gazetted and is in no way considered or even mentioned in the order. And that was created after the process would have begun. And it was really to facilitate objections and baseless objections, I'd like to say, baseless objections and frivolous objections by the APNU agents. And what that has not only did they create it, but they would have gone even further to silence all stakeholders except for the APNU AFC. And in addition to that, we have all sorts of delay tactics or strategies that are coming up every day to slow the process. So in one breath, you're hearing that we won this recount, we have won the elections. This is by the APN or the government. The next minute, we're hearing the elections itself was tainted with such fraud and irregularities that is leading to fraud. And based on that, we should be getting a fresh election, or we should have fresh elections. So the narrative is changing every day. The delay strategies are changing every day. The recount process, as we know it by law, has completely morphed into some sort of investigative process.
All right. If I could bring Joe in, your take on the process so far.
Let me start off, Michael, by saying to the viewers that if you're on Facebook, and I suspect Gordon Mosley news bulletin this evening, where he patently and blatantly lied, reporting that the PPP Civic threatened court action if GECOM goes ahead with investigating dead people voting and that kind of nonsense. I listened to Anil press brief, and at no time he indicated that the PPP will go to the court. His position was that nothing in the law allows GECOM to do those type of investigation. And therefore, Gordon Mosley is lying through his teeth to suggest that the PPP threatened court action. Threatened court action for what? We have nothing to hide. We have indicated and we have presented to the world our statement of poll that we won the March 2nd, 2020 elections. And that is our position. And the recount that is 23 days old, it is establishing that fact via the ballots that are being counted out of the boxes. And therefore, you know, Sonia was just making the point when she, in her opening comments, about the changing narrative every day. And you have a lot of these media types who continue to help APNU to change the narrative. But the fact is, nothing they do, Gordon, and the viewers can change the ballots in the boxes. And that is the issue here, a recount of votes cast. So Mosley spewing propaganda and lies cannot change the numbers. And the numbers so far has proven the PPP won Region 1 or District 1, the PPP won District 2, the PPP won District 3, that was today finalized with over 24,000 votes. In Region 1, we doubled APNU AFC votes. In Region 2, we tripled their votes, and we have 24,000 more votes than APNU in Region 3. We have also won by over 4,000 votes in Region 5. So of 5 of the regions that have been declared via the recount, we have won 4 of those. And I just was looking at the latest tabulation on day 23. We have so far, based on the SORs, we are at 146,000 votes, some 26,000 or more ahead of the APNU AFC, and that will continue until all the votes are counted. The other issue is that I saw Vincent Alexander this afternoon trying to elevate these observations report to the status of equal to the tabulation reports, which is total baloney, because the observation reports are what they are. Observation reports, observing what might be defects of GECOM system in the box. Of course, GECOM has allowed the APNU AFC to utilize the observation report for propagandistic value.
But GECOM in my view, Joe, has been surprisingly, and I want to use a strong word, embarrassingly muted. And after you respond to this, I'm going to ask Sonia's response. Embarrassingly muted about the onslaught brought against its work. by the APNU. See, that in essence is what it is.
No, well, the onslaught is to intimidate. If we go back in time, Michael, we would know that many of the people who were involved in the conspiracy to rig the elections, who are senior functionaries.
My point is, if
GECOM.
I am GECOM and it's my work, my professional pride dictates that I will defend my work, unless.
No, but remember, that's the point I'm making. That's the point I'm making. GECOM is not coming forward to defend its work, because the reality is that many of the personnel in GECOM, more so at the senior level, were participants in the attempted fraud and rigging of the elections. And so they're still, if they have an opportunity, Michael, remember, they're still attempting, even at this late hour, to see if perhaps they can concoct something new to try to declare Granger the winner of these elections, which is an impossibility. So the point you were raising, Michael, they have no, Myers and Lowenfield and the likes, they have no interest in the fact that Aubrey Norton can say that many of the POs were compromised by the People's Progressive Party civic. They have no interest to defend those persons and their credibility. Their only interest is to try as far as practicable to see, even at this late hour, how they can delay and railroad the recount, because Myers and Lowenfield, like we have had since the 2nd of March, in our possession, the statements of polls that indicate the People's Progressive Party civic won the elections. Lowenfield, he also has in his possession, and I'm sure Myers would have seen it, the same copies of the same statement of poll that the PPP won the election. So I hear you. The senior people of GECOM who is supposed to defend GECOM and its work, they wouldn't do that, because they want their co-conspirators, the APNU AFC, to continue to spread and to spew the propaganda that they continue. Notably, I have not seen, Michael, the last couple of days, the PR person of GECOM speaking at all to the press. And therefore, there might have been an embargo on her via the likes of Myers, because I'm told she has taken over from Lowenfield. She is attempting to run the show there at the Guyana Elections Commission.
Sonia, we're going to talk a little more about the apparent posture or the posture of senior operatives within the GECOM Secretariat. But if I could take you back to a substantive issue, and I'm also going to pull on your legal mind in relation to not just one member of the media. However, there are several sections of the media that act as surrogates and or mouthpieces of the APNU AFC in relation to the ridiculous nature of the recounts. The issue, and I would rather suspect it is, with that being said in one section of the media, I would rather suspect it's a particular line that you are likely to hear repeated in relation to, as Joe referred to, the new source report about the PPP planning to take legal action. Sonia?
Yes, well, I would have seen that post by Mr. Mosley in relation to, and the article, referring to the article that PPP threatens legal action. That is a complete, that is an untruth, and nowhere have we don't have anything to hide. We want this recount to go ahead. We want it to be completed. And as a matter of fact, we don't have anything to prove to anyone. The numbers, as the recount process continues, the numbers are proving the accuracy of what we have stated all along. That being said, it is really for those who are making the objections of the dead voting, of the persons who they claim have migrated voting, And I must say this, with our electoral process and the structure that we have there, I don't really see that would have been virtually impossible to have happened. All of these objections that they're making and the claims and allegations that they're making, it ought to be properly placed in a petition and placed before a court. So really and truly, those are the only people who will be going to court in relation to this, to the recount process. It's not us. So what we are hearing about the PPPC threatening legal action, it is completely inaccurate. And it again, it is propaganda that is meant to incite a reaction from their supporters to continue the narrative, because as the accuracy of the count is coming out, what is happening is that the desperation is mounting. Their desperation is mounting. So you will hear all sorts of allegations against the PPPC as we go along. But as it is, as we are here today, we don't plan to take any legal action at the moment. We don't have any reason to. We are going through with the recount as it is.
Sonia, if I could pull on you, on your thoughts, especially from the perspective that you're physically there practically or possibly every day since the recount has started. I spoke a while ago about the posture of senior members within the GECOM Secretariat as it relates to their apparent and obvious political preference relating to, and Joe spoke about the Deputy Chief Elections Officer and her apparent attempt to run the show, if I could put it that way, in this recount process, and in relation to the management of GECOM as a whole, ably assisted by the government commissioners on the commission.
Definitely. If I may say, from what I have seen and what I have encountered myself, is that almost every, what has happened now is that a basket of issues has been created, and it has certain paragraphs in it that really prevents us from making a case for ourselves if there's a ballot in question or something like that in your station. It really has to go through a hierarchy. But really and truly, when that ballot comes out of there, when that issue comes out of there, the only person that you're hearing from is Miss Roxanne Myers. She's really the only person who's dealing with it. And it may go to Mr. Lowenfield, it may go to the chair at some point. But again, Ms. Myers is the one who comes back and tells you this went to the CEO, or that went to the chairperson, and this is what the decision is. That is what I have encountered personally. And also, not only is she doing that, not only is she seemingly the carrier of the messages, but she has also been sitting in on and participating in the commissioners meeting, and having some sort of, or trying to have some sort of influence in that meeting as to how the process should go.
Okay, Joe, your take on this?
The thing is that the person whose blame it is the chairman, because the chairman is allowing Myers to wield this authority and power that she don't have. Myers is an employee of the Elections Commission, like Lowenfield and all the others. She's not a member of the commission. Myers is a member, an employee of the Secretariat of the commission. And I think that is what the blame squarely, as I said, it belongs to Claudette Singh, because she somehow has allowed the Secretariat senior leadership to make them believe that they are in and at the level of the policy decision making of the commission, when that should not be. All Myers should be doing is carry out the instructions of the commission. But it seems like the tail is wagging the dog, as they say. Myers seem to be, in some instances, instructing The commission, of course, being egged on by the GECOM, by the commissioners of the government, most especially Vincent Alexander, and I have said a long time ago, even before elections, when we had all the issues and debate about the list, that the architect of everything that has been happening at that time as regards the house-to-house registration and the lists, and even at this moment, is one Mr. Vincent Alexander. And so he is very much involved in all the things, and Maya's, I'm sure, she take her cue and her instructions from him. And therefore, the chairman has failed to assert herself the way she should have. And you know, I was a former employee of the Elections Commission in the IT area. And I worked with Collins, I worked with Hopkinson. And at no time, those chairpersons and the commissioners at that time gave any leeway to officers of the Secretariat to believe that you can railroad the commission and you can instruct the commission. But for whatever reason, now you have that situation that is happening. But Michael, we go back to Myers could do whatever she wants, as much as she would want to do, like she has done in March at Ashmin Building, bringing in the riot squad fully geared for riots to throw out party agents and observers and even commissioners out of the building. The fact is, all of that don't change the numbers in the boxes. And that is where we have to come back to all the time to say to our supporters, all the antics and all the sideshows, they do not change those X's that are marked next to the cup that gave the People's Progressive Party Civic victory at the March 2, 2020 election. That is the reality of the situation.
So, Sonia, for all intents and purposes, the APNU FC has given up, in my own view, the war of the ballot, which it has obviously lost.
Yes.
It has become now a war of propaganda, a war of semantics. Now, the issue of a delay in the declaration, it has been coming to the fore. Speak a bit about that.
The issue of the declaration. Well, what happened is that we have learned that, or we're learning that the declaration is left open-ended. What we have, or what the order said, is that after every region, we will have a certificate and then eventually a declaration. The AP and UAFC agents have refused to sign off on Region 5. They have refused to sign off on Region 2. Yes, and I could not, it baffles me because these are persons who would have signed the statement of recount, all of the statements of recount, verifying the accuracy of those numbers and the counting of those ballots. And then at the end of the day, they refuse to sign the certificate that actually shows the amount. That aside, we've also been hearing that the declaration, the final declaration or the declaration after all of these regions would have completed, it will be left open in the sense that there may or may not be a declaration that is final in relation to what was these ballots that have been counted in this process. Well, I would like to say that the law provides that after this recount, you must make a declaration. You have to make a declaration.
Otherwise, what is the purpose of the recount?
Otherwise, what is the purpose of the recount? And not only that, the recount is a part of the electoral process. It is not separate and apart from the electoral process. Therefore, as we go along, that declaration ought to be made in relation to what we have counted. And then we have also seen why the declaration that Mingo made should not be the declaration that is used. So obviously we are now counting the ballots as people have put their X's on it, and we are looking at the will of the people, and really and truly that is what should count at the end of the day after a recount, and a declaration ought to be made.
Joe?
The thing is, Michael, an election starts with a voters list and conclude with a declaration of the results of an election. So I know APNU AFC will continue to try. They will never stop. But for me, a declaration must be made, will be made. And the declaration will be based on the recount exercise. There is no other set of numbers we can go back to. This recount has superseded whatever was there before. For whatever reason, the chairman put Mingo's second declaration in abeyance, whatever that means. That should have been in the garbage bin, not abeyance. And we have moved beyond that. And if you note, I think Sonia would have it at her fingertips more than I would. Christopher Ram, a couple of days ago, reminded us about what the aid memo said regarding this recount exercise. The three passages there, signed by Granger, Jagdeo, and the Secretary General of CARICOM. If I recall, the last paragraph or clause says that the conclusion, after the conclusion of this recount exercise, there shall be a declaration by the Guyana Elections Commissions or something like that. So I think what is happening is a set of little psychological games being played by APNU AFC, attempting to create doubt, trying to still give their supporters something to hold on to. Everything that is happening is an attempt to give their supporters something to hold on to. Granger, big show last week when he went to the convention center is a part of it, to show that my supporters, I am still in charge. I am still president. Yes, we know that. You're president until your finale is sworn in. So I don't pay too much mind to those little psychological games. And this issue, you see Alexander, trying to argue this afternoon, as I said earlier, trying to elevate this observation report, give it some value as regards the recount and the declaration. The observation report regarding the declaration has no value. As I see it, the observation report, it is to allow GECOM, in my view, the only purpose in my view it can serve is to allow GECOM to help GECOM to review some of their systems as the electoral body to manage elections. There's no other value. It has no value as regards the numbers, because the exercise is to recount the ballots cast. And that is what will determine the declaration. And already we have declarations made. These tabulation reports are declarations of districts. That is what they are. The tabulation recount. Whilst you don't have, like you have in the elections where the arrow in the presence of agents call the numbers out and declare, that is what the document signed by GECOM. And let me say this, people also are getting worried about APNU not signing on the document. The most important signature on those tabulation reports of the recount are those of the supervisors, or what they call the coordinators of the district.
Most certainly.
That is, the other signatures are just to are just witnesses in my view. The other signatures, all the other signatories to those reports are just witnesses to the count and the numbers that are in those reports. The fact is that the body entrusted to manage elections in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, the Guyana Elections Commission, the authority of the districts that they have appointed, who are coordinators of this recount, they have signed. And that is the important issue here, that GECOM has not refused to sign their own tabulation report of the recount. So APNU could continue not signing. For me, it matters not. If GECOM coordinator had refused to sign one of the district tabulation and recount, then I would have a problem. But right now, I have no problem APNU refusing to sign those reports.
So, Sonia, at the forefront of the recount, there's a particular issue that I would prefer to refer to as untidy, and it's an ugly attempt to thwart and discredit the entire process. And these are the claims relating to dead people, people who have migrated, and people who in some way, shape, or form do not qualify to vote on elections day. And one of the startling revelations is that those objections or observations are only being made to individuals in PPP strongholds. There's absolutely nothing, zero, zilch of these observations in active strongholds. And this is juxtaposed against the fact, the reality, embarrassingly so, that most of the people so far have been coming forward and saying, look, this person has died. This is the person's death certificate, but their name has not been ticked off. Secondly, you're saying that I voted and I migrated, but here I am.
Here I am voted, that's right. And we know that residency is not a prerequisite to having your name legitimately be placed on a list and you be a legitimate voter. So that is one issue. Now, the other thing that they're not telling the public is that in many stations, and especially you will find it in Region 6, Region 5, where we have Region 2, where there are those areas, those regions are our strongholds, you will find they're calling a list of, they have the different categories: persons who have not collected their ID, persons who are out of the jurisdiction on the day of elections, and deceased persons. Those are the three categories they're going under. And what they've been doing is they're calling a string of numbers. You're calling randomly, just pelting numbers at you. And I would like to believe that that is a guessing game for them. There is no concrete evidence. There is no validity to what they're saying. What they're doing basically is throwing numbers out there, and if they catch one, it's fishing. If they catch a fish, they catch a fish. That's basically it. So they throw out 100 numbers, and what we have been restricted to now, or as a matter of fact, the GECOM staff has been restricted to now, is only placing those numbers. If you have 100 numbers being called, and I'll tell you, we've had more than 100 numbers being called in some stations. I have personally had 7 to 9, and you will only find about 4 ticks out of those. But the staff has now been instructed, and this is where I believe that the higher uppers in the GECOM or the GECOM hierarchy in the Secretariat, they are actually aiding and abetting and facilitating the APNU AFC in doing this. They have restricted the staff to now put just those persons whose names are ticked on that observation report as if they would have accurately called a number, and that number was ticked on the voters list. Now, what is interesting to us is that we don't get to see whether that name is actually ticked on the list. And when we do find out, that person is either alive, the name is not ticked on the list, or the person had a legitimate right and did vote on that day. So these are all things that make them look very embarrassing to me. And I as we go along, as the days go along, we're seeing more of it coming out, and we're seeing persons who are coming out and saying, look, I'm not dead, look, I have voted, look, I had a legitimate right to vote, look, they said I was out of the country, but here I am. I don't know what they're talking about, but this is what's been happening in there.
Joe, do you think the word desperation is an accurate term to use?
Yes, that is what it is. It is desperation. And they started off by saying these objections are allegations, I think, and the PRO of the GECOM said there's no evidence, they're allegations. Norton took it another level yesterday. He said he would call them proposition. They're proposing that maybe, and then he says that they're hoping that GECOM can help them to verify whether their proposal is accurate or not. So it is trying at this late hour, Michael, to feed their supporters who still believe in their foolishness something. And it is coming back straight to where I predicted before elections, that all the confusion that they were attempting to create about the list, it was not about pre-elections, it was post-elections. And therefore, all of this that they're trying to build up this invalid case to say to their supporters, we could have won, but it is because of the rigging of the PPP. But the fact is, the PPP don't run elections. The PPP is a contestant, like the APNU AFC in the elections. The PPP is a contestant.
But allow me to say this. I found it quite amazing that they would try to disenfranchise so many persons. But have you ever heard of any of these agents or any of the APNU candidates or the de facto ministers or the president himself coming out to tell you that when I went on elections day and I voted, that the process was flawed? No, none of them have you ever heard that from. So they're just, it's really the tactics of a sore loser. That's what it is.
If I could move the discussion forward, we've heard from President-elect, President-in-Waiting, Dr. Irfan Ali today, as he outlined how Guyana can be moved forward and will be moved forward once upon his assumption of office, and especially as it relates to relief to Guyanese at home, and also measures to kickstart the economy, measures to open back Guyana up back, and of course following measures to flatten the curve as it relates to COVID infection, and see that downward spiral as it relates to COVID-19. What we've been hearing from Dr. Ali has been, I dare say, very presidential. And of course, first and foremost, his intention to ensure and to see the development of Guyana and the well-being of its citizens, Joe.
The People's Progressive Party civic president-elect, if you note when
Guyana's president-elect.
Right, the president-elect of Guyana, who was the candidate of the People's Progressive Party. Let me correct myself. When he established the stakeholder forum, the people who he assembled are technical officers, primarily medical technical officers. And that is the difference. Whilst Granger assembled politicians to deal with this matter, and that is the reason why we're faltering. Whilst other countries in the CARICOM are saying The last person that was infected has left the hospital. We have no new patients, and we have no new person who we have tested in the last week. We are increasing. The numbers in Guyana are increasing. It is suggesting, must be suggesting to us that something we are not doing right, that we should be doing right, like the other countries are doing. And the simple thing is, the task force is made up of political acts who are utilizing COVID-19 as a political weapon. That is what. And therefore, you can't have the results in flattening the curve because people are attempting to utilize this epidemic for political gains. That is what APNO FC is doing. And if you note, the report this afternoon is that they have refused the request of GECOM to establish 2 more stations. And that should inform you where they're at. The threat of total lockdown, people have already interpreted to mean and to suggest that it is an attempt to stymie the recount exercise so that these elections will not conclude itself. The important thing too, that you're talking about lockdown and so forth, but you're not talking about measures to help the needy during the period. All countries that have had lockdown, you have stimulus packages attached to lockdown, because if you just willy-nilly lockdown, people will starve in this country. And even with the partial lockdown, just with the curfew, you have people who have already are unable to feed their children. And therefore, the faster this recount is over, the faster, and that's the reason why we find it alarming that GECOM is attempting to allow the declaration of the results to be an open-ended exercise, when it should be a definitive timeline so that quickly we can have a legitimate government in place to deal with this matter. Because up to this afternoon, I think we see 11 new cases in the last 24 hours or something like that. I saw one news report. So we're not decreasing people who are affected, we're increasing whilst other countries in the Caribbean are decreasing. If you note, in this whole exercise, the chief elections office, the chief medical officer, you have not heard of from him. The epidemiologist of all the people who are talking to this matter, this medical matter, are political types who have no competence to deal with the matter that we're faced with. And we will get it done the right way, the correct way, when a PPP government is installed very shortly.
Sonia, just before we started this program, and it relates to the same issue of the level of leadership demonstrated by President-elect Dr. Ali in relation to more or less charting a roadmap forward for Guyana as we enter a new era of the near finale administration. This is, I made this comparison also to, just before I got here on the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, I saw the Prime Minister of Barbados and Chairman of CARICOM, Maya Amor Motley. She spoke to the measures that country has taken. And when I looked at that, and she spoke to measures across the region. And when I looked at that, I said, this is leadership. Similarly, yes, when I looked at Dr. Ali's broadcast today, nothing other than leadership has been demonstrated as against a backdrop of a deafening silence and a paucity of initiative by the incumbent.
Uh, I would definitely agree with you that Dr. Ali, or President-elect in waiting, or President-elect, has exhibited tremendous strength, leadership throughout the entire electoral process, throughout the COVID pandemic, and even prior to this recon, and in all of these issues that we've been having, he has spearheaded uh, the COVID-19 relief program that we have, basically, where he set up his task force. And up to today's date, he continues to show or demonstrate that leadership by providing for the vulnerable, by providing for persons out there who cannot or are unable to work, to access during this time. The other thing is that he is absolutely correct as it relates to the quality of leadership that we need in every aspect right now, as it relates to the COVID, as it relates to the elections. And he rightly said that a democratically appointed government is what we need. That is the only way we can move forward. We need to reopen Guyana, or provide for every aspect of Guyana in such a way that we will be able to progress. And the lack of leadership that we have right now uh, is actually, it shows in the way we have been handling this pandemic. As a matter of fact, we are kept in the dark as it relates to so much information. The quality of the care that is handed out there is unknown to us. And so many other aspects that we cannot speak about because we don't know of them. There is no leadership shown
And
in the health sector, and we
this
don't
includes
have a qualified.
expenditure.
I beg your pardon.
No, I said this includes expenditure.
Yes, it does. And it when you say expenditure, you're talking about the expenditure that is not being handed out right now.
No, and I'm referring specifically to the expenditure on the alleged
Irrelevant.
response to the COVID pandemic by the administration of the day. No one knows the volume of expenditure. Of course, we are paying.
Right, we are kept, that's what I'm saying. We are kept in the dark as it relates to the finances. We are kept in the dark as it relates to strategies to move ahead or to tackle this or to flatten the curve, as you have said. We don't know what amount is going into this, what is going into people's pockets. We have no idea. There is no transparency, there is no accountability in it.
Absolutely. Joe?
The last in the last what 48 to 72 hours, you have new situation regarding the same matter you raised, Michael. I saw a report today where Valda Lawrence is now taking the patients to the Ocean View hotel that was retrofitted, that is incomplete. The attempt to make it a medical facility has not borne fruit, but they're moving the people from Diamond into that building. That is it. The issue is we don't know how much money, we don't know what is the agreement, what's the arrangement as regards that building. The other thing in the last 48 hours or so is where the government is now saying to our brothers and sisters who want to return to Guyana, you're returning here and you have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, 14 days, but you have to do it at your own expense. You know, and they have suggested via some release they have to people overseas who are planning to come back home, that you can utilize, you that have the money, you can utilize Brandville, who um, a supporter and a financier of the APNU. You can utilize Brandsville for so much a night. And for you who don't have the means, you can go utilize some short-time hotel that is somewhere in Charlotte Street. That is, when countries, there is no country that has left their citizens to fight for themselves as regards their quarantine. Every country took that responsibility and they quarantined and they paid for the quarantine of their citizens. Guyana is asking people to pay for their quarantining. And you have another methodology, and I think the Private Sector Commission today issued a statement making the point that the same way how you allow the CARICOM observers to do their tests in their home country and walk with their documentation, the same thing you can do with the citizens who want to return back to Guyana, the students and whoever. And if you recall, in the first instance with the CARICOM observers, the same thing Nagamutu said to them, that if you come, you have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. And then they changed that and say, okay, you can do the test and walk with the documentation. Why not do the same for our Guyanese brothers and sisters who want to return home? Why not do the same, where they go and do their test and they walk with the documentation? Why are you asking them to quarantine themselves at their own expense when you have at least a caretaker de facto government? That is the responsibility of the government to do. And that is why you have, I saw the Mercy Hospital establishing their own COVID center. Why not the government do a public-private partnership arrangement with the hospitals to allow for them to use a wing or a floor? They already have the medical facilities. Why you go to a hotel and try to retrofit it and you have to import medical materials and so to utilize? But all of that is being done because these people are supporters and financiers of the APNU AFC. So even in the late hour, everything is being done through corrupt practices.
Joe,
why do people must go to Brandsville?
I know I don't want us to discredit the point. We have more than sufficiently concluded the asininity of the overall response to COVID-19. Our time has gone. Let's talk very briefly, 2 minutes, about expectations moving forward in relation specifically to the recount.
Well, the expectation, Michael, quickly is that the statement of recount and the tabulation report will confirm the PPP's civic statement of poll that we have issued since the 5th of March, and most especially in Region 4. That secondly, the People's Progressive Party civic, we won these elections with an excess of 15,000 votes. And thirdly, Irfan Ali is the president-elect of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, who is waiting for the recount exercise to be concluded, who is waiting for GECOM declaration to establish its government, to move this country forward and to put in place all the plans that we have put before the Guyanese people via our manifesto during our elections campaign. That is my expectation. And that is, I suspect, the expectation of most of the people of Guyana, because the Guyanese people, whether they voted for APNU, AFC, or PBP, or ANOG, or whoever, they want this to end. They want a conclusion of these elections so that they can go about dealing with their lives and their business and taking care of their children and ensure that they can do the necessary things to prosper and progress in this country. That is my expectation moving forward.
And I dare say on March 2nd, the Guyanese people, whether they voted for PPP or APNU AFC, the Guyanese people spoke and their voices must be heard. Expectations moving forward, Sonia.
My expectations is that the recount process will be completed, that a declaration will be given that is reflective of the will of the Guyanese people based on the ballots that we have counted and confirming or reaffirming the numbers on the statements of poll given on the 2nd of March 2020, thereby enabling us to have a democratic government be implemented so that Guyana may progress as it deserves to. So that is my expectation as it relates to recount. But as I've seen every day, that is not going to be an easy task. But I am hopeful and positive that we will get to that end.
Ladies, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you, PPP counting agent, attorney at law, and candidate for the People's Progressive Party in these elections, Sonia Parag, and veteran politician, Mr. Joseph Hamilton. Mr. Harmon seems to be on my list.
Michael, I'm very much more handsome than Joe Harmon. Don't do that to me.
I'm not going to even though I'm inclined to concur. Thank you for being a part of this program. We've concluded day 23, and we are looking forward to the recount continuing. We are hoping for a smooth process as we go into day 24. I'm your host, Michael Gordon. Thanks for inviting us into your homes or wherever you are. Do have a good night.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you.
Hi, Michael. Thanks.
Thank you.